All right, and sitting down with us again for another episode previewing the upcoming NFC and AFC Championship games. We've got friend of the show, Kyle Kirkwood. How are you, bud?
I'm good, man. Again, yes. Can't get enough of this. This is fantastic. And yeah, can't wait to get into it.
Yeah. Go figure. We didn't do one for last weekend's games, and last weekend's games were the ones that I went 4 for 4 on with my predictions. Would have been Nostradamus-like, but we of course skip it, and now no one believes me that I went 4 for 4. So.
Only you and I know the real answers.
Yeah. So, all right, right off the hop here, what do you want to do first? You like the AFC or the NFC Championship to kick us off?
Well, I mean, let's go alphabetical order. So let's go AFC.
Okay, well, look at you knowing your alphabet here. Eh? A does start the alphabet, so let's start it off here with the good old AFC Championship. I mean, I'll maybe go first on this one, and I'll let you get first crack on the NFC side. But to me, this is the less exciting of the two, for the simple reason that to me the entire game comes down to one question: is Patrick Mahomes playing? If Patrick Mahomes is playing, Kansas City, I have all the confidence in the world that you're going back to another Super Bowl there. If it's Chad Henne time, who, good for you. The fact that you are still in the NFL cashing game day checks, until last weekend, I didn't know he was still doing that. That was news to me. So if he's trotting out there, obviously the Chiefs' chances take a big hit there. So again, don't get me wrong. Obviously, he was injured last week. He got diagnosed with a concussion, but he's out practicing today. So you and I both know right off the hop that there's too much money at stake. There's too much endorsements, everything else around it, that come hell or high water, he's playing this weekend, right? The real question is he going to be 70%, 80%, 90%? Because you don't recover from a concussion in 3 days. You shouldn't be practicing, but it's the worst kept secret in sports. The NFL and the NHL trade, titles of who has worse concussion management between the two leagues there. But if he gets out there, even if he is at 70 to 80%, he 70 to 80% of Mahomes is probably better than the starting quarterback for, a third of the league's teams right there. So he still gives them such a good chance. And I mean, I just even look back to last week's game against the Ravens. The Bills, yeah, they won, but it was, sloppy. The kickers couldn't hit a field goal to save their lives. So mentally, I don't know how that plays into this week. Confidence can't be too high about putting it through the uprights. But even go back another week, and against the Colts, you and I were texting late in that game there, and we couldn't believe some of the play calls, the clock management, which was just giving me flashbacks of Andy Reid in Philadelphia there, and it was going apoplectic at some of it towards the end of the game. But in both games, to me, it almost seemed like the Bills didn't so much win the games, but the Ravens and the Colts lost the games. And if you don't subscribe to that mentality, okay, let me spin it for you another way here. The Bills did just barely enough to win both of those games. And if your strategy going into Kansas City is we are going to do just barely enough to try and win this game, you're going to get blown out. You're going to be on the wrong side of an ass whooping for that right there. So, had it not been for the Taron Johnson, whatever it was, 102-yard pick six in the end zone, Baltimore takes the lead, and they might even, run away with the game at that point there, because there was nothing that the Buffalo offense did that really instills confidence in me that, they're going to be able to keep up if it turns into a track meet against the Chiefs there. And, I really look at this entire playoff run that they have been on as the classic, you got to learn to lose before you win. I think that this is the year where, the Bills, they get one game away from being in the Super Bowl. They lose. They get the playoff reps, they get that experience, they get that little taste of playoff success, but ultimately fall short of their goal of making the Super Bowl. That doesn't sit well with them. Immediately in the off season, you get Allen and all of his receivers hole up in California or Cabo or something, and they turn into a mini frat house, and they just eat, sleep, breathe football, train together, eat together, do that whole thing, and come back a team possessed next year. And I think, they're one or two maybe flashy off-season signings or a trade or however they get it, whether it's, trading up in the draft or whatever, but an impact player on the defensive side of the ball that, that will get them over the hump. Because again, they were almost subscribing to that bend, don't break, old circa New England Patriots mentality there, where they really didn't have too much pressure on the quarterback. They were kind of moving the ball. They just weren't able to get it in the end zone on them, which works up to a certain point. But I think the front office takes care of business in the offseason. They make an addition or two there. Al and the boys come back, really refocus next year. And I think come this time next year, we're talking about the Bills being in the AFC Championship game again. And who knows, depending on who they add, maybe I'm picking them to move on. But after all of that, you can pretty much assume where I'm going with this. To me, I'm taking Chiefs. If Mahomes is healthy, I'm going, 31-17. But the giant asterisk to this is, for some reason, if Chad Henne marches out there and is under center, maybe we do even see a third consecutive week of the Bills doing just enough to move on. So I'm taking Chiefs unless Henne is there. What do you got for me?
I actually like a lot of what you're saying, and I'll start with Buffalo. The thing that gets lost in how they've really advanced this far in the playoffs is when your team's not performing at the top level that they should be performing at. That's when good coaching really comes in and kind of calms everything down and really sets their players up for opportunities to succeed. When you look at what Sean McDermott's done there since his time, since he became head coach, he's been fantastic. He's brought the team to a new level. He's got good experienced coordinators and Brian Dable on offense and Leslie Frazier on defense. Those guys have really formed their units, to match what they really are as a person. So I think that gets lost in a lot of what Buffalo has done so far in the playoffs. And, going to your point of, they've done just enough to win. It's the playoffs. That's all you need is just enough to win. You can win a game. Yeah, exactly. The old Al Davis thing, just win. So you can win a game 3-0, and at the end of the day, you advance. And that's all that matters. When you break it down even further and kind of go into positional, but by position by position, the one guy who's really stood out is the most important player on the team. That's Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. He's really taken that that next step up, from where he was at this point last year. Like you were saying, him and his receivers got together early. They worked a lot together in the offseason. And I think he really is on the same page with his offensive coordinator this year. You could tell that he's more confident. He approaches the game with a new refined attitude, which ultimately is making him more focused, right? So he's leading better. He's actually, taking those moments that, hey, it's time for me to make a play, and he's actually making them, which is great to see. Whenever a young quarterback can make that leap, it's actually, I don't care who you cheer for, what type of player you like. That's what really makes watching sports great. So, I mean, from that perspective, that's going to put them in a good position to win every single week when Josh is playing at that level. That being said, you look at what they did last week. They didn't run the ball. Losing Zach Moss was, obviously a bigger loss than people realized. Mm-hmm. He was in between the tackles. Let's grind it out. Maybe get 10 to 15 carries a game, and kind of spread out their offense a little bit. Devin Singletary, as good as he's kind of shown in flashes, I don't think they really have the confidence in him to really utilize him in that bell cow role. So how the run game really plays out for Buffalo, I think is going to be a big indicator of how they can move the ball down the field and how they can be successful against Kansas City. That Stephon Diggs is going to catch balls. That Cole Beasley's going to catch balls if he's rolling out there at 100%. Gabriel Davis, he's been looking good. John Brown came out of nowhere last week after being kind of MIA for the last 2 months, and he stepped up. So the passing game is going to be on point. That's one thing I will say. They're rolling on all cylinders right now, but that run game is that missing element that you can't win playoff games if you're one-dimensional. If you're throwing the ball 55 times and running it 5, you're not going to win. Mm-hmm. That's just a recipe for losing. From Kansas City, you're right. The biggest thing that it comes down to is Patrick Mahomes healthy. And it's not just from the concussion standpoint. He's got an issue with his toe, which, again, that's a bigger issue than I think people realize that it is. It's difficult to throw a football if you can't transfer your weight from foot to foot.
Mhm.
And if you were putting weight on your foot, it's going to be on your big toe. His scrambling ability is going to be limited. So who knows how that's going to affect it. So again, that changes up what Kansas City's going to do on offense. But Patrick Mahomes is the type of quarterback where he can beat you so many different ways that he really doesn't need to have the running ability in order to beat you. They will scheme that. They will make sure that he is protected at all costs if he's out there, and he will make plays. I'm listening this morning to NFL radio on Sirius, and I'm hearing an interview that they're having with Dr. Chow, who is a neuro specialist, and he was actually saying that he with all the symptoms that Mahomes was showing, with everything that was going on, he actually doesn't believe that it was a true concussion. He was showing concussion like symptoms, but he believes that it was actually sinus trauma. So the way that he landed on the field, actually, his face mask maybe had hit his nose in a certain way, and then it caused sinus trauma, which caused the equilibrium, to be off a little bit. Which who knows if that's true or not? But obviously, he's practiced at that for many many years, so he would know better than us.
Yeah.
The fact that Mahomes is practicing today it bodes well for him to play this weekend. So I don't think that that's going to be an issue. What you also hear from Kansas City's perspective is they got Clyde Edwards-Helaire practicing today. They had Sammy Watkins practicing today. So if they get those two guys back on offense, now you've got the full scale weaponry that Kansas City has to offer. And if that's the case, I mean, not too many teams can keep up with an Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy called offense with every single weapon at their disposal.
Yeah.
The one thing that is a weakness for Kansas City is the right tackle position. If you watch Kansas City, Mahomes is constantly rolling to his left or stepping to his left. That's been an issue for them all season because obviously with Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, opting out of the season, they had to kick the right tackle in to play right guard. So they have a brand new right tackle this year in Mike Remmers, and who's been known to give up pressure from the right tackle position. So that's another interesting thing to watch if Mahomes really is hampered with his mobility, is how are they going to affect that? Is Kelsey going to line up more on the right-hand side to help out the right tackle to chip off those ends? If that's the case, I think that, again, Kansas City will be able to move the ball. And if they have their full running back, crew intact, they have the ability to do exactly what they did weeks and weeks ago in the regular season, which I alluded to the last time we spoke. They ran the ball for over 230 yards that day.
Mm-hmm.
And now they have Le'Veon Bell added to the mix. So if you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Le'Veon Bell, and Damian Williams, you've got those three guys who can all run the ball extremely well, and they all kind of bring a different element to the game. As for the defenses, Buffalo's defense has played really well, regardless of what what the scores have been, and ultimately how many yards they've given up. I mean, you look at last week what they were able to do, limiting what Baltimore has done to teams in the last 2 months. They did a really good job. They stopped Lamar Jackson for the most from using his legs. They took away a guy like Mark Andrews, which is obviously his safety blanket over the middle. And the run game never really got going, and that's what really hampered Baltimore all game. For Kansas City's defense, like you were saying earlier, the bend don't break mentality, that's kind of what they are. That's what they live on. They're going to make plays when they have to, but it's going to take a while for them to actually get comfortable in a position to make those plays.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at the guys that are leading on that defense. You got a guy like Tyrann Mathieu. That guy, his energy feeds off everybody else. So everybody's going to feed off someone like that. A guy like Chris Jones in the middle can really disrupt someone like a Josh Allen because, again, Josh Allen's really at best when he's moving around, right? He rolls out to his right. He launches the ball downfield. That's what he does. If you can do, like I was saying last time about the Rams and the Seahawks, if you can do what the Rams kind of duplicated against Russell Wilson and get pressure up the middle, that really hampers what a quarterback can do. And if I'm the edges, again, keep Josh Allen in the pocket. He's way less likely to complete passes if he's being a true pocket passer. He's at his best when he's moving around. So if Chris Jones can be a problem in the middle, that creates opportunities for guys like Frank Clark on the outside to get pressure on the quarterback. But I think having a guy like Tyrann Mathieu and having more, being in that position that they were in last year, Kansas City going all the way to the Super Bowl, I think that that's going to really be the factor in the outcome of the game, especially being an Arrowhead with some fans. And, again, we talk about not having a full barn, but the atmosphere there is just, you can't recreate it. It is what it is. It's going to be loud. It's going to be cold. It's going to be, playoff football in Kansas City. So I'm with you. I have to go with Kansas City. I think that they've got a lot to prove, and I think that this is going to be Eric Bieniemy's chance to really show that, you know what, I'm not just a one-year wonder. I'm going to show everybody that even when I'm interviewing for all these jobs, I can still create a game plan that's creative enough, to get us to that next level. So I'm going to go with Kansas City, and I think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring than people expect. I'm going to be in the line of about a 24-17 game.
Okay. All right. Well, we're both on the same page there.
Yep.
So we'll move over to the NFC here now. We'll see if our train of thought is the same, but I have a feeling I know where you're going with it, and we'll give you the floor here first. But you before we actually get your predictions, just on the QB matchup, is this the best quarterback matchup we've seen in a conference championship game in maybe the last 10 years or so?
I mean, on paper, yes. You look at the two resumes that these guys bring into the game, and it's unmatched. You look at the first round pedigree with Aaron Rodgers, won a Super Bowl, he's won MVPs, he's broken records. And you look at Tom Brady's resume, it's unmatched. I mean, from a playoff perspective, there's been no one better than Tom Brady.
Yeah, he's done all right over there.
He's done okay. He's done okay. At this point of their careers, would I say that it's the best matchup that we've ever seen? I mean, I'd have to go back and look at certain matchups, but it has to be in the top three because, again, I think we talked about it in the last podcast. This is the best ball that Aaron Rodgers is playing in his career.
Mm-hmm.
This is the best ball that Tom Brady's been playing in the last 5 to 6 years. So you're getting these guys playing at the best moments of their, of the current moment, which is exactly what you want. When you have two guys that are talented, that are great leaders, that utilize all the weapons that they have around them, this is what strategy, when strategy really comes into play and who's going to go out there and implement that strategy the best.
Mm-hmm.
So because I had picked Green Bay in our previous podcast to win the Super Bowl, I mean, nothing has shown me otherwise to go against them. Mm-hmm. What they did to the Rams defense last week was actually more impressive than I think what people see on the surface. The Rams defense was the number one defense in the NFL this season.
Mm-hmm.
They have guys all over the field, and you saw what they did to the Seahawks the week before. They made them look flat. Mm-hmm. They took away what they did well, which is run the football. They took away their top weapons. I mean, obviously DK Metcalf was going to be DK Metcalf, and he had a day. But when you look at what Green Bay was able to do, the Rams had zero answer for what they did. And that's not because of anything that they did. It's because of what Green Bay was doing. Mm-hmm. They're switching it up, going from no huddle. They're switching it up, going to, we're going to throw short. We're going to throw short. We're going to throw short. And then when the defense starts to creep up, okay, well, now we're going to run to the outside. Now we're going to throw a pass downfield. The thing I love about, what happened last week was, Jalen Ramsey being as great as he was, going to Davante Adams pregame and saying, "Don't run from me. I want you. I want you on me all game." Davante Adams smiled at him and said, "Okay, I'm here."
Yeah.
And he went to his coach afterwards and said, "I'm going against 21 all game. So you tell the other guys that they're moving around. I'm staying where I am." To have that confidence in yourself and to know that Aaron Rodgers is going to say, "Yeah, we're going to make this happen, and we're going to make it seem like we're going to run the show here." That's the type of confidence and swagger that you want from a championship caliber team.
I wish I was that confident about anything in my life.
Yeah, it really does take a lot of practice. I mean, you look at how Davante Adams has evolved as a receiver over the years. I don't think he would have been able to say that 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. When you look at what he's been able to do the last 2 years, especially getting that special rapport that he has with Aaron Rodgers, that's the type of confidence that a quarterback playing his best football can bring you. Because you only have to be open by 2 inches and he'll get the ball to you.
Yeah.
Right? When he's on, Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in the league. So the thing that really has impressed me about what Green Bay does is that their offense doesn't look like they're slowing down a bit, and their defense is actually stepping up and playing extremely well right now. Jair Alexander looks phenomenal as a shutdown corner. Adrian Amos is playing lights out at safety. Their linebacking core is making tackles all over the field. Their defensive line is actually getting a lot of pressure where they weren't getting this, 2 months ago. Mike Pettin's a really good coach. He's the defensive coordinator for Green Bay, and I think that he, talking like we were with Buffalo, he's really gotten this defense, to really take that next step. So everything that Green Bay is doing really has, given me no qualms about saying that they're going to be the Super Bowl representative out of the NFC. Now, that being said, they got to play on Sunday, and they got to play a pretty damn good football team in Tampa Bay. And, to me, Tampa Bay's got the best overall coaching staff in the league. I love every single thing that they do, and I think that they're probably the most well-prepared group, especially when you incorporate a quarterback like Tom Brady, who's a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Again, Tampa Bay is one of those teams where they are so loaded across the board on both sides of the ball that would it surprise me if they win that football game? Absolutely not. Because you've got a two-headed monster in the backfield. You've got an offensive line who's playing very, very well. You've got a receiving core that's stacked. You look on the defensive side, their defensive line is ridiculous. They've got two linebackers who run sub 4.4s, who cover the field like no other linebacking core can. And their young secondary is really stepping up right now. So this is going to be a really, really good football game. And it really is going to matter of who makes less mistakes. Because you saw last week with the Bucs and Saints, ultimately the team that made less mistakes won the football game. Yeah. And that's what happens when you have two really good football teams. One who makes mistakes and one who doesn't make mistakes. Well, the one who doesn't make mistakes is going to win 10 times out of 10. So that's going to be the same case this week, but this is outside.
Yeah.
This is in Green Bay. It's not going to be the coldest game, but there's something about a night game in Green Bay in the wintertime in the playoffs that plays some mental head games with a lot of players, especially young players. And when you look at Tampa Bay, they've got a lot of young players on that team. How Tampa Bay will win the game is, one, they need to get the run game going early and often. Because when you can get those two guys rolling, that opens up what Tom Brady's really good at, and that's play action. When you get a guy like Gronk at tight end, he gets going when the run game gets going because he loves to block. You get him on a few blocks, and all of a sudden the defense starts to tighten up a little bit, and that's when you get a little chip release, and then that's when he gets those 40 to 50-yard passes downfield. Once they get the run game going, I mean, they've got a basketball team at receiver with Godwin and Evans, right? I mean, those two guys are as big and as physical as you can get. Will they be able to shut down both of them? I mean, if I'm Green Bay, I'm saying we're covering Evans. Godwin's had the drops lately. Let's let him beat us. If anyone's going to beat us, let's let him beat us. Make them throw the ball to Scotty Miller. Make them throw the ball to Johnson. Antonio Brown's dinged up. Who knows if he's going to be at 100%? Hey, throw it to Antonio. He hasn't shown anything yet. Take away Mike Evans, and that pass game has to adjust. But again, everything that I've seen the last couple of weeks, Green Bay really does look like the best team in the NFL right now. I have to go with Green Bay, and I'm sticking with them to win the Super Bowl. So I think that Green Bay is going to take this game in a very back and forth football game, and I think we're going to see something along the lines of like a 37-31 Green Bay.
Oh, barn burner.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're finally different here. And the first one in the AFC side, that was more so just my eyeball test and things that I've seen. And this is my gut feeling. I've got to refer to my notes here because if I'm going to make the case that Green Bay is going to lose at home in Lambeau at the NFC Championship, the number one overall seed,
you got to come with it.
I got to come with some sort of stats here. So, I mean, right off the top, like we were saying, this is the match that people have been waiting to see for years, right? All the Rodgers fans there, all the Brady's fans, for whatever reason, in Wisconsin, they're convinced that despite the fact he's only got one Super Bowl and thousands of less, passing yards and touchdowns and all that Aaron Rodgers is the actual greatest of all time. Well, sorry, anyone outside of, Lambeau probably differs on that opinion. But, I mean, this is the first time we're going to see them going head-to-head in the playoffs, right? And completely different atmosphere than even whatever it was, week 6, when these two teams matched up, and it was an absolute slaughter fest after, Green Bay goes up 10-0 and then ends up losing the game. I think it was like 38-10 or something.
Yeah, it was a tale of two. Sorry, it was a tale of one quarter. Green Bay looked fantastic one quarter, and then forgot that they had to play the rest of the game.
Yeah, they thought they were in the 100-meter dash. It was actually the 400-meter hurdles. So they showed up to the wrong event. But, I mean, it's the first time Tampa Bay's been to the conference championship since 2002. Green Bay's back there since last year. And this is, again, why I was saying this might be the best quarterback matchup we've seen in a conference championship in quite a while, because it always seems like just one of the teams has just like a meh quarterback there, right? Like, love him to death, but like, Nick Foles was a quarterback a few years ago. Jimmy Garoppolo was one of the. So even if you do have that greatness on the other side, we rarely get, like you say, both of them. If Aaron Rodgers isn't the MVP, I don't know what the heck is going on with the voting this year. So you've got the likely MVP against the greatest of all time, right? Who it would be one thing if it's Joe Montana with the Chiefs version of him there, but Brady's, like you said, he's actually gone up a level over the last 5 or so years since he's gone to Tampa there. So, likely MVP versus greatest of all time. If we do go back though to that week 6 matchup, it was the defense and what they were able to do and disrupt Aaron Rodgers, the entire game plan that they had, and they held him to 160 yards, 2 picks, and a 35 QBR, right? Like most MVPs don't have that in a single game over a course of a season. So like it was an absolute dismantling. Now, a lot has changed since week 6, obviously, but the one thing that I will say is throw out that weird stinker against Washington, where I think the Bucs probably showed up thinking like, we know we're going to win this game. We can probably get away with not giving it our full effort.
Tyler Heineke.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. This guy's a beer. He's a green bottled beer. He's not a real NFL quarterback. But, aside from that stinker, their defense has been getting better and better every single week. And they're just getting more and more fine-tuned to the point where even when they aren't bringing the house with the blitz, they are getting pressure on every single down, right? And if it's not the defensive line, you've got 2 all-world linebackers there in Devin White and Levante David. How Devin White was a Pro Bowl snub, I have absolutely no idea. Like the kid's in his 2nd year in the league and is already one of the top linebackers in the entire league. Like he is going to be special for a long time at what he does there. Mm-hmm. And I think, he had a monster game against the Saints there as well, too. It's all going to come down to takeaways. And if the Tampa Bay defense is able to do anything even remotely similar to what they did to the Saints last week, then that is what puts them in the position to win. I'm not saying they need 4 takeaways, but if you give Tom Brady, a short field to work with, 2 takeaways that result in points, and I'm not talking field goals, I'm talking touchdowns, which are going to probably be at a premium because who knows, it could change, but they're calling for snow for Lambeau that game, so could be a little bit sloppy out there. Points might be at a premium, so it might come down to, like you were saying, who takes care of the ball better. So if you can give your quarterback and your offense a short field to work with, coupled with all of those weapons that you have, now you're really working with something there. I mean, what Green Bay does really have going for them, though, is, and it probably plays well into the fact that there's going to be snow, is they have now a 3-headed monster at rushing, right? They've got Aaron Jones, they've got Williams doing his thing, and now all of a sudden A.J. Dillon is sprinkled into the mix there as well, too. He's come alive in the last third of the season. And
so before you get to your next point, I'll be quick on this. Remember when everybody criticized Green Bay for not taking a receiver and taking A.J. Dillon in the 2nd round? You think they had a little foresight as to why they needed a guy like A.J. Dillon in the 2nd round going forward?
Yeah. It's almost like the front office kind of knew what they were doing there. They had a bit of a game plan going into it. But, I mean, I would still have been pissed with the fact that they didn't take a single.
Yeah.
That's just me. But, yeah, they hit on that one for sure. But, I mean, they have really been doing a good job of sprinkling them all in to the point where it's not just, okay, AJ got 2 cute carries and that was it. Like, all of them are getting like 6 or more touches in the game. Their legs are fresh, and I think that's really going to pay dividends in a snow game where people are going to get tired, you're going to get cold, there's a risk for injury, and if you're not, relying on that single bell cow running back that you need him to produce, and you can, if he's having an off game, you still have 2 other options back there, that bodes really well for them as well too. On the other side of the coin, though, Tampa Bay is the #1 rush defense in the NFL, both in yards against per game and yards per carry. So it really is a case of strength going up against strength there.
Yeah.
Carlton Davis, who I would assume is probably going to be tasked with covering Devontae Adams, and you know what? Good luck to you. Like it really is at this point almost a not if he's going to score, it's how many times is he going to score in a game there. So if they can get even, a remotely contained afternoon, and I'm not talking, he needs to hold him to 40 yards receiving, but if you can hold him to like 100 yards and 1 score, that's probably a pretty good day there, because there is the other side of the other option that's present there is he just gets his lid blown off the entire day and he goes for 200 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns, right?
Right.
Carlton Davis is that guy who gets a little jumpy with his routes, which results in him getting the takeaways, which you like. But
see the Kansas City game in the regular season for that.
Yeah, but at the same time too, with Devontae Adams, like, he is just so good at those precision routes and not being a single foot further than he needs to be. He's so in sync with Rodgers. And I mean, you just look at what he did against Jalen Ramsey, who's #1 corner in the league, right? Like, again, only 66 yards and a touchdown. But guess what? That was 9 catches on 10 targets. He got what he wanted when he wanted it. Those are chain moving passes. Those are first downs. And what you don't want to do is allow Aaron Rodgers to go out there and have this big 7-minute long drive that chews up the time, tires out your defense, and then it results in a score. That's Green Bay's recipe for success right there, right? So, it is going to be interesting to see that. But at the end of the day, I'm just liking the direction that Tampa Bay is going. I think is going to come down to defense. I think offensively they match up fairly similarly. A lot will be determined on Ronald Jones's health as well too. He's playing, right, but he had a quote where he's like, "I can run, but I can't take the top off it." Okay, well, that sounds like how I describe how I run, right? Like, I can run, it's not fast, right? So when you're an NFL,
let me pull a hamstring or two as I go.
Exactly. So whether it's the quad or the hamstring, if something's going on there, they're being a little bit mysterious with it. But that doesn't bode well. Cold weather doesn't bode well for soft tissue injuries either there. So how healthy is he going to be? Leonard Fournette. I would much prefer Rojo to him in terms of running. If it's going to turn into a LaShawn McCoy and Leonard Fournette day, well, I think it's going to be a lot of just check down passes and screens and whatnot there. But I like defensively what Tampa is doing a little bit better than Green Bay. I really truly think it's going to come down to who has the ball last. It's going to be a 1-score game. If this turns into a blowout, I would be shocked. I don't see either team absolutely running away with this there. But storylines here, like, talk about it being almost stars aligning in the sense that there are 2 quarterbacks in the NFC who had probably the most to prove this year, right? You've got the Aaron Rodgers, FU revenge tour that he's on. You took Love and, you didn't give me any weapons. Everyone thinks I'm past my prime. Well, screw you. I'm going to go out and win MVP and possibly go to the Super Bowl here. And then you've got Tom Brady, who, despite all of his accomplishments, is literally acting like the Terminator to prove that he was the reason for all the Patriots' success, and Bill Belichick was actually just along for the ride with him. So, and go figure, there's the 2 teams that meet in the NFC Championship, especially when preseason, you had all the ESPN experts and all that were saying, oh, NFC North's up for grabs. Who knows? The Bears could win. A couple people had the Lions winning it, and it's just like, oh my God. And again, you don't know what you're going to get out of the Tampa Bay experiment going on down there.
Yeah.
So the fact that these two quarterbacks at the age that they're at had the seasons that they did and are now meeting for the NFC Championship there. Don't tell me that, oh, well, every year you're trying to win the Super Bowl. They don't need extra motivation. Okay, look at who are the two left standing. Don't tell me that those added motivations don't play just a little factor, even at the professional level there.
Yeah.
When you've got that extra chip on your shoulder, it can take you places there. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's going to come down to probably whoever has the ball last, and, who takes care of the ball more. I'm going to go with a 31-27 Tampa win to set up the grudge match of Patrick Mahomes, the young up-and-comer gunning for all of Brady's records, versus Brady for the Super Bowl, who's trying to teach the youngster one last time that I'm not off the throne yet.
And Carlton Davis's nightmares continue trying to figure out how to cover Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. Good luck. Good luck. You've got the route running specialist in Adams, and then you've got Usain Bolt's doppelganger out there. That's going to be a fun couple of weeks for him there. Holy
yeah.
So, all right, moving on. We've got a litany of hires here in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So, recent hires: Urban Meyer to the Jags, as predicted on our last episode. I mean, not too much to say about that. That really wasn't a surprise to anyone. Everyone kind of figured that's who the Jags were targeting and who he wanted to go to. So we both said it would have been our number one destination to go to. So can't blame the guy. What are your thoughts on the hire there?
I think that it matches well from both perspectives, because I think what Jacksonville ultimately needed was structure. But they also needed a coach who understands younger players, which they didn't have before with Marrone and Coughlin. Yeah. They had structure, but they had too much structure.
How old is he now? The 80-year-old Coughlin couldn't relate to Generation YouTube and TikTok?
Yeah. So I think that's what they were looking at is, what happened with Jacksonville from the time they made the AFC Championship. All of their best players are wanting out. The whole team is being jettisoned. So there's a reason for that. And that's because management and players aren't meshing the way that you need them to. You can have all the talent in the world, but if they don't want to play at the top of their level, it's not going to happen. Yeah. With a guy like Urban Meyer, he brings in a history of success, obviously from the college level. He has coached young players his whole life. He knows how to relate to them. And if he doesn't, he's going to bring in coaches who do, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a perfect match for what Jacksonville needs and what Urban Meyer was looking for a potential jump to the pros. Mm-hmm. It gives him the opportunity to coach and mold young players, and it gives Jacksonville the structure that they need while also having a guy who understands them. Yeah. So, I mean, good hire. If I were to put a grade on it, I would say that's a solid A in regards to a match.
Yeah. Well, he already said too, he's not going to be that coach running all over the field, screaming up and down there for health reasons, probably primarily. Exactly. But, he said he's changed, but the old ticker can't take it. But so it probably will be someone a little bit younger chasing those Jags around there. Jets actually go out and get one of the premier coaches out there in Robert Saleh. I was a little bit surprised he went there, given the fact that he probably had, his choice of all the teams remaining. But at the end of the day, I like the hire. I think the Jets got the number one guy that they were probably targeting. I think he fits well with their system. I think, again, if I'm putting a grade on that, it's probably, A-, and they'll probably be happy with it. It'll be tough to see what they really have there until he gets his talons into it and see what results from the first draft. But at the end of the day, I really do think that they made a smart move there, and that's not something you can always say with the good old New York Jets is smart move in the same sense.
Yeah, and I love the hire. I think that the Jets knocked it out of the park with this one, and I think going back to, I don't know if you remember or not, but going back to our first conversation with the playoffs, this is where I actually predicted Saleh to land, was with the Jets. The reason being is because, again, he's a young coach. He has a lot of energy. He's built something. He's coached on 2 coaching staffs that have really given him, good perspective on what building a quality contender is. One with the Seahawks, coaching with Pete Carroll and Ken Norton and everybody that they had there. And then moving on to San Francisco and taking on the challenge of rebuilding a defense there, which he's done a very, very admirable job of. So you think you combine all those things together, you got the youthful exuberance, you've got, the defensive mastermind where he can really sink his teeth into a young, hungry group that's looking to rebound from playing for Greg Williams for the last 3 years, which that can't be easy for anybody.
Yeah.
So
let alone Adam Gase.
Oh my, do not get me started on Adam Gase. That man does not belong on a high school sideline.
Don't worry, he's only interviewing with Seattle right now, the new coordinator. So
hey, look at me, everybody. I had Peyton Manning as my quarterback. Look how awesome I am as a coach. Oh, I don't have Peyton Manning anymore. Oh, weird how I don't know what I'm doing.
That was a spot on impersonation.
I know. Well, you got the eyes bugged out too when you're looking, and that guy is just an absolute disaster. But anyways, I can talk forever about how terrible he is. But going back to what's going to make Saleh successful in where he is, he needs to bring in an offensive mind that really does things outside of the box, because the Jets have been stuck in neutral for so long in that offense that they have not been able to get out. And especially when you have some good young pieces, you need to have somebody who's going to put them in a position to succeed. And the guy who we just talked about, who I don't even want to say his name anymore, he came out and said
Voldemort to
you. he came out and said that he didn't do a good enough job developing Sam Darnold. Well, yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
The guy was a 3rd overall pick. He's got all the talent in the world, and he's basically rolled out there and he's running a 1970 style offense. So you need to, if you're going to be a young coach and take care of one side of the ball, you need to hire an assistant head coach who's going to run the offense, so that way you don't have to worry about it. But you need to take cues from what Kyle Shanahan does, because that guy can, make chicken salad out of what. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what the Jets have to do until they get the talent level on that side of the ball up to par. So that's really going to be indicative of how successful he's going to be early on. But I really do like the hire. I think that with everything that they had going from, the dark, miserable last 3 years that they have had in New York, having a guy like that with as much excitement, and I think he's, a very, very well respected and well liked coach by both coaches and players. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very, very good matchup, and I think that's going to bode well for them.
Yeah. Moving out to the West Coast there, we got Brandon Staley going to the Chargers. So defensive coordinator with the Rams. He's literally moving across the hallway because they share the same stadium there. So this is like a Lakers coach going to coach the Clippers. But I mean, I'm sort of just meh about that one. I would have really liked them to have gone out there and gotten, an offensive guru to really work with Herbert and really unleash that potential. I was thinking it was either going to be, someone coming up from the college ranks, like you were saying, it could have been Lincoln Riley, you were thinking maybe, or I was saying maybe the Bills offensive coordinator, or even their quarterbacks coach, just the job they've done with Allen out there. So to get sort of a defensive minded guy, right? There are 2 sides to a football, and both need to be good. So it will really depend on, obviously, who he brings in to be his offensive coordinator there, because he's coming from the number 1 defense in the NFL, so he obviously knows that side of the ball really, really well. But the Chargers were just so mismanaged over the year that it's hard to get a read on what their identity really is, right? Like, did they blow all of those games late and choke this away and come up just short here because of terrible play calling, or is there more of a fundamental roster issue that they need to address there? So I don't know. It's sort of middle of the road to me. I'm neither thrilled with it nor super disappointed. It's just a meh on my end.
No, I think that's the perfect way to describe it. I think everybody who heard of the hire said, eh.
Yeah.
Again, you can't take anything away from what he's done with the Rams defense. I mean, taking over a unit that, by all intents and purposes, was underachieving last year, and getting them to perform at the level that they did this year is no small feat. Now, that being said, you also have two of the best defensive players in the league to work with, so that can cover up a lot of inefficiencies. So, what what really surprised me about the hire is that they did go on the defensive side of the ball, because I, like you, thought that they were going to go for somebody, on the offensive side. Now, the fact they went with a young coach does not surprise me at all. That was something that I think was going to be the choice all along. And I think what really came down to it was they looked at who their head coach was the last 4 years in Anthony Lynn, and he's an offensive guy. I think they wanted to maybe just take a shift over to the defensive side and see. Um, and again, yeah, I would have really loved to have seen what a guy like a Lincoln Riley could have done with that offense, because they have so much talent, so much youth, that I think a guy like a Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma could have stepped in there and taken off with what he's done in that offense, much like a Cliff Kingsbury with Arizona.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, like we just made the comment about the Jets hire, it's really going to depend on who becomes the offensive coordinator there. And now they're saying that they might keep their current OC on board,
Mhm.
which obviously is good for the development of Herbert. Um, and if they do that, hey, that's smart. You've got a guy who obviously the kid trusts. You've got a guy who
Continuity there as well
a little
too.
bit of continuity, exactly. So that would be smart. You let him handle things on the offensive side. You implement what you need on the defensive side and focus more of your attention to that. And hopefully you can have a harmonious relationship, because ultimately that's what really makes coaching staffs great, is when you can trust all of your coordinators to do what they're doing. And especially if you're passionate about a certain side of the ball, like a Sean McVay, for instance, with the Rams. When he first got hired, he brought in Wade Phillips as a defensive coordinator. Well, do you think Sean McVay paid attention to the defensive side of the ball for more than maybe 10% of the time?
No.
No. He's an offensive guy. He loves offense. He calls plays. He's really immersed with the play calling. He's got to be there to do all that stuff. So he trusts that Wade Phillips is going to call the game the way that he needs to. That's the relationship that you need to have in order to create success. So, I mean, with a guy like Staley, I think that it could really be a good match if him and the current OC fit well. And let's see where we go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've got Arthur Smith to the Falcons, so former offensive coordinator with the Titans there. I mean, talk about going from the penthouse to the outhouse in terms of Derrick Henry as the focal point of your offense, to who have the Falcons trotted out there at running back over the years. Like not since what, maybe all the way back to like Warwick Dunn, did they really have that bell cow running back? So he's gonna have to do something down there to modify what he was doing up in Tennessee, because you're not going to be able to hand the ball off 30 to 35 times a game to an all-world talent. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. Like I was saying too, with that sort of aging roster of Julio, you've got Matt Ryan. How many years do they have left before it turns into a complete teardown? What do they even do with their high pick? Is this the year that they go out and they draft that quarterback to be sort of that successor to Ryan and start grooming him? Or do you try and address another need and try and win now? It's a bit of a weird spot. The higher the team and the stage that it's at right now, it all just sort of smells to me as just sort of that placeholder until Matt Ryan does retire or is traded or cut or released or whatever, and then it's full tear down. This guy's getting canned, and then it's a full reset on the coaching staff as well too. That's my take. I hope for his sake that he's not moving all the way to Georgia just for a couple of years and then he's getting canned. But that's my initial knee jerk reaction is, how long is he going to be there?
Yeah. What I really kind of
Yeah.
find what I really find interesting about this hire is that people probably look at it the same way that you do, and Dad, what, this is just something where it's going to be a placeholder. But when you look at how he kind of operated with that offense, yes, it was focused a lot around Derrick Henry. But when you have a guy like a Derrick Henry, you need to get him the ball. He actually had a quote where he said, having a guy like Derrick Henry is having Shaq in his prime. You need to get the big man the ball, and you can't be further from the truth. So I mean, offensive coordinators cater their offenses, and good offensive coordinators cater their offenses around their best players, and they get their best players the ball. And Derrick Henry's your best player, you get him the ball. But you look at what he was able to do with a guy like Ryan Tannehill, and really kind of reinvent how he, is as a quarterback. Tennessee had the best efficiency in the red zone over the last 2 years. Ryan Tannehill is a big reason for that. And you look at the development of the young receivers that they have there with AJ Brown and Corey Davis. That can't be overlooked. And again, that screams to me that maybe he has a lot more under his sleeve than what's on the surface. And so I think that are you going to replicate what you did in Tennessee in Atlanta? No, because you can't. You don't have the same talent there. But you still have some pretty good talent in Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley. Matt Ryan, I think, has a few good years left in him, so he can obviously, get you a few games where maybe the rest of the guys aren't stepping up. You have a decent offensive line who they've invested a couple of first-round picks in over the last few years, and all you need is some stability and continuity at running back, and I think that you're in good shape. Now, where the problems come up are on the defensive side of the ball. Who are you going to keep? Who are you going to get rid of? Yeah. And really, what is Arthur Smith going to look at to put his stamp on the team? Now, they just hired an executive from the New Orleans Saints to be their new GM. They have 2 extra third-round picks because of that hire due to the new diversity rules. That helps them. Obviously they're hiring the guy because he's talented, but this just happens to be a nice bonus because of it. Yeah. But when you have a new GM and a new head coach, extra draft picks, hey, give us all them that you can. So when you look at how you're going to build the team, the first pick's really going to be indicative of how Arthur Smith's tenure in Atlanta is going to be. Do they go with a young quarterback? Do they go on the defensive side of the ball and take maybe a middle linebacker like a Micah Parsons from Penn State who can lead the defense? Do you take an offensive lineman to help increase that run game like a Sewell? Do you trade down and collect extra picks? Maybe take one of those top end running backs that are coming out in the draft this year. Who knows? That's really going to be indicative of how they're going to build that team and how Arthur Smith's going to put his stamp on it. But I actually really kind of like this hire, given how poorly you and I thought of the situation going there, because that is a difficult situation. Yeah. But I think that that's a very sneaky hire, and I wouldn't be surprised if that team turns around quicker than expected.
Yeah, I don't doubt that they'll turn around. I guess where we might differ on opinion is, if Ryan Tannehill, he gets to Tennessee and, he's a completely different quarterback. How much of that, and we'll find out pretty quickly, with a new offensive coordinator in Tennessee, and then with obviously Arthur down in Atlanta there, but how much of that was the fact that Miami was just such a cesspool for the early portion of his career versus, the offensive genius? And that's the $1 million question, right? So like you say, it might be a match made in heaven, or you might find out pretty quickly that, okay, well, maybe he was just sort of the benefactor of a good situation.
Hey, and that's the roll of the dice that you make every time you hire somebody, right? Do they fit the system, and do the players fit who they are as a person? So no, that's a good point by you.
Well, that's sports, buddy. Yeah. Okay. And now you said that you would actually consider, the Lions as a attractive destination because you're glutton for punishment. Well, like if I'm a Lions fan, this is the definition of glutton for punishment here. And, Dan Campbell, who I'm sure is a fine gentleman in real life, but I mean, New Orleans assistant, he was a tight ends coach. He's never been a coordinator at any level of football, let alone he was an interim head coach, I think, during some of those cesspool years that we were just talking about in Miami there. But like, is this the best they could have done, right? Is Dan Campbell to be your next coach? 6 years too, right? Like it's the longest of all the deals that's been doled out here. So I don't know. This smacks of, probably a different personality, but similar results to the Matt Patricia experience that we just had in Detroit.
So I actually love this hire.
There you go.
Yeah, I really do. And the reasons being, Dan Campbell is a complete 180 from who Matt Patricia is as a person. You talk to anybody who's played for Dan Campbell, and even if he hasn't coached them directly, they will go through a wall for Dan Campbell. The guy played in the NFL for over 10 years. He's got connections everywhere. He's one of the most well-liked people in the NFL if you talk to anybody. And I think when you have someone who's like a drag on society, like Matt Patricia ended up being, it really just, maybe that breath of fresh air, bringing like kind of that little ray of sunshine in, can turn the tide very quickly, because Detroit, by all intents and purposes, has some fairly good talent on that roster. They just need to, want to play again. Like they need to love to play.
Yeah.
So
But this again sort of is just speaking to, it's almost like politics, right? Like, we don't like the conservatives, so we're going to vote in the liberals. We just had an offensive guy coordinator, so we're going to bring in the next head coach's defense. We just had a prick as head coach, we're going to bring in a nice guy. Right? Like, is the solution really just going to the opposite end of the spectrum every time? Or
it's throwing darts, man, like we were just talking about. You hope that you hit on the right person at the right time with the right players, and if you do, then magic happens. The one thing I'll say is the reason why he got 6 years is because they probably know and realize that it's going to be a long build.
Long 6 years.
Yeah, it's going to be a long 6 years, but it's going to be a long build there. And it's going to be a process, and I think that when you commit to somebody for 6 years, it gives them the confidence and the and the stability to say, hey, I'm here for the long haul. That says something to the players too, right? Like, we're not just hiring this guy out of the, out of necessity. We want this guy in here. We want what he brings to the table. He brings all the things that we're looking for, that probably the players have asked for when they talk to ownership and management. And so, hey, you know what? You want this guy? Well, we're going to get him in here, and here's our commitment to you. And then, to your point of he hasn't been a coordinator anywhere, that is one of the most overused analogies when you look at when you're hiring coaches is, has he been a coordinator? Has he done this? I really don't care if my head coach has been a coordinator at any level. A leader is a leader. And if case in point, you look at a guy like a John Harbaugh. Okay. John Harbaugh, the highest he ever got was a special teams coordinator with Philadelphia. Before that, he was a quality control assistant. He was an assistant, positional coach. He becomes the special teams coordinator. Not a glamorous position. Everybody regards that as kind of like the third tier coordinator position on any team. What has he done in Baltimore since he's been there? He brought the persona, he brought the attitude, and he brought what they needed that was different from a guy like Brian Billick to really take the team to the next, to turn that corner and do that. So, I mean, when I look at a guy like Dan Campbell, I don't care what he does. I don't care if he knows how to draw up, a play. I really don't. Does he know how to, handle his team? Does he know how to bring in talented coordinators to run, their side of the ball? And does he know how to handle pressure when it comes to making those tough decisions, like you're talking about earlier with Andy Reid and Frank Reich with game management? Does he know when to call a timeout? Does he know when not to call a timeout? Does he know when to, put his players in a position where they're going to be able to make plays without taking too much time off the clock or not having enough on it? Those are the types of things you look for. And when you have a leader, leaders will eventually lead, and they'll bring guys along with them. So I actually like the hire for those reasons, and I think that this could actually be a very good fit.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be one of those ones we'll have to revisit a few years down the road
100%.
when it's either, the first Lombardi trophy in Detroit history, or he got canned and it's I told you so. Because
it's a ho hum.
Yeah. I'll leave it at this though. is he's been tight end coach now with New Orleans for, I think, the last 5 seasons. Okay, so this is post Jimmy Graham. Where are the results in terms of tight ends producing in New Orleans? I'll leave it at that. That's why I'm not sold on this selection here. Anyways, we're getting late into the evening here, so we got to keep moving along because we've got 2 very interesting situations here, right? You've got the Texans, who still don't have anyone in place, but I mean, even if you're a free agent and they are opening the vault to you, no one is going to go in there until they get an answer to what is happening with Deshaun, right?
Yeah.
Because Deshaun's not only has he had his cryptic tweets and all of this and that, but he's flat out said, hey, yeah, when DeAndre Hopkins got traded, I was probably like a 3 out of 10 pissed off of the organization. I'm a 10 out of 10 right now. I don't think he's ever taken another snap for the team, right? I genuinely think this is the last we've seen of Deshaun Watson, and he's going to become the 4th big name Houston player to leave. Not even talking about football here, but we've got James Harden's left. George Springer just signed with the Blue Jays there. You've got DeAndre gone. Deshaun's going to be good. What's going on in Houston right now?
Too many hurricanes.
Something's in the water. But I mean, it's tough to really get a read on them because would you take that job until you knew what was happening with him?
Yeah, I mean that's a difficult one, and I really think that again they need to bring in the right guy in order for Deshaun to actually say, you know what, I was upset, I didn't want anything to do with the franchise, but this new guy who's coming in is giving me that breath of fresh air that I needed. You know, much like we just had the discussion with Dan Campbell. So. Yeah, this is all going to come down to who they bring in, which ultimately will tell the tale of whether Deshaun stays or whether he leaves. Like we talked about last podcast, I've had Eric Bieniemy pegged to this position since Bill O'Brien got fired. You have to think that a guy like an Eric Bieniemy, who has a great relationship with not only Patrick Mahomes but a lot of high-profile players in the league, along with Andy Reid, along with his playing career, that could be just the bridge to gap, the Deshaun Watson Houston Texans discord right now. So I sincerely hope that he doesn't leave, because realistically, I hate to see a franchise player leave under, a situation like this. You want to see a guy who fans embrace, who really emphasize and embody what the community is. And I think Deshaun's really done that. And he's really been a guy who hasn't really been vocal about stuff. He's just been you know what, I'm just going to go out there and play and do my thing. And I think having a guy like an Eric Bieniemy come in, that can really save what they do. So hopefully they can be smart about this and say, the guy is, and I'm talking about Eric Bieniemy, the guy is obviously a talented coordinator. He's a well-liked guy. He comes from a very, very high, high-class coaching pedigree with an Andy Reid. I don't understand why obviously they can't name him the head coach as of right now because he's still coaching. But if they don't have a deal done with him right now that they just have yet to announce, I think that it's done. I don't think there's any way else they could save it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. That's obviously the story of the offseason, is what's happening in Houston.
I would be shocked if we saw Deshaun Watson in a Houston Texans jersey next season. That brings me to the other head coaching vacancy here, which, conspiracy hat Kyle sort of pointed out that it would be pretty telling to see, based on how that, week 17 went, of who really made the decisions on, benching Jalen Hurts and yada, yada, yada.
And, as soon as that happened, I honestly was clapping to myself because I said, you hit the nail on the freaking head when we had that discussion. It honestly played out exactly how you called it. And kudos to you for actually seeing that situation happening, because I think everyone was thinking it, but you were actually one to come out and verbalize it. So good on you.
I'll put that one up there on my wall of fame amongst my thousands of missed predictions there as well, too. So
but see, that one you did get on tape.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It wasn't over a beer at a bar, so that
Yeah,
one at least will live in infamy there.
there
But
you go.
I'll let you get first crack at this because I've got a rant I have to go on here.
Yeah, you know what? I'll keep my short because I know that you definitely have something to get off your chest here. So again, I think this is an attractive job, for anybody who really wants to, take on a challenge of being a head coach. And you hear a guy like Josh McDaniel sniffing around now. You hear, maybe a guy like Deuce Staley, who's on staff, could step in and take over as the coach. And I see you laughing, so I already know kind of where your thoughts are on that. But I'll leave it at this. My brother's actually a huge Eagles fan, and he said the sentimental part of me wants Deuce Staley to be the head coach because, you know, he was part of the team when I was, really engulfed in it. So, for me, I think that it makes too much sense to hear a name like Josh McDaniels, paired with a team like Philadelphia to not have it happen. So I think that happened, or, again, conspiracy theory, Lincoln Riley comes to work with his quarterback and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. I was such a huge Deuce Staley fan when he was a player. I loved him. I love the job that he's done with the organization. He's moved up, from I don't even know what he started as. I think he was just
He's a
filling
quality
water
control
bottles,
coach. Yeah,
essentially.
he's a quality control coach. Yeah.
Yeah, and now he's moved up through the ranks. I love him as a person. He's phenomenal in the city. I don't want Deuce Staley to be the head coach of the Eagles there. I really hope that because they interviewed him. I know that happened, but I hope it was the classic, like, well, we have to interview the internal candidates, and it's more of a courtesy interview there rather than we're seriously considering you. I hope he actually does stay on and continues to play a role with the organization. And
I'm like you. He's a very good coach.
yeah. And you know what? If he's a little bit ticked off that he doesn't get the head coach position and, hey, he's ready to move on, maybe even offer him something in the front office or, something helping out with the assistant GM, VP of whatever the heck you want to call it there. Give him something, keep him in the fold though, because he is great in the community. But at the end of the day, love you, Deuce, but I don't want to see you rocking the headset there. Moving on to McDaniels. There's also another person I don't want to see anywhere near the Eagles as well. Too. Call it just, the hate for the Patriots maybe, but I don't know. The rational part of me thinks that he is just going to wait out until Belichick either dies or finally relinquishes control and will eventually take over. But I mean, he's being quote unquote groomed for that head coaching position there for 10 years now, it seems. So who knows whether that'll happen. I don't know. I'm not a huge Josh McDaniels fan. Still, the whole thing with the Colts still rubs me the wrong way. If you're going to do that, what are you really going to do, behind the scenes that isn't going to make national headline news when you're trading players?
And what happens when that New England job does become available? Do you jump ship and go back to New England?
Yeah, are we going to have a Belichick Jets fiasco here and a Bill Parcells-esque situation? Just avoid him entirely. To me, it comes down to two people who are actually both available, and I really like it. It's our good friend, Mr. Bieniemy from Kansas City, who is my number 2 choice. And the fact that he's my number 2 choice, I am perfectly happy with him as a consolation prize.
Yeah.
If he ends up head coach, more power to him. I love it. The only thing that's raised a little bit of a red flag is, what is going on with him still? Like, he's been the quote unquote hot name for 2 years now and still hasn't gotten something done. Now, is it the fact that they just can't announce it? And like you say, he's got one of those little wink, wink handshake deals there with the Texans already in place. Or is he just bombing interviews? Or is, race playing a factor where you've always got all of these owners who are tooting the Rooney rule and, oh, look at all the good it does and that, but then they just keep going out and hiring the same old white guys for their third stint in the league. And, I failed at these 3 organizations, but, the 4th time's the charm. Here we go, boys. Like, it makes you wonder a little bit, right?
I think with Eric Bieniemy, it really comes down to situation. And like I was saying the last podcast, he's had no shortage of opportunities. And I think under the advisement of a guy like Andy Reid, who probably went through the same thing when he was a coordinator with Green Bay, you have to evaluate the situation. Because, I mean, you can jump into a situation like Atlanta and just say, I'm a head coach for the sake of being a head coach. But on the surface of that, it's, well, what happens if, we don't win in the next 3 years and Matt Ryan's gone, Julio Jones is gone? Where am I?
Yeah.
So are you going to be that head coach who just jumps ship to be a head coach, or do you want to be strategic about it? And again, you're taking a chance because you have to duplicate and replicate the success that you have, but just wait for that perfect opportunity to come along where you get to work with the guy that you want to work with. So whether it's a GM fit, whether it's a quarterback fit, whether it's an owner fit, whoever that may be, I think you have to wait for that situation, because who knows when you're going to get another opportunity. You want to make sure that it's the right one and you're there for a long time. So I think that's the case more than anything, but who knows? I mean, it could be anything.
Well, like you were just saying before too, you never know whether the new hire is going to be a product of the system that he's in, or it's the system is a product of his input, right? And there is that a little bit of hesitation of, okay, is it the fact that he's an offensive coordinator in an Andy Reid system that passes God knows how many times every single game, so obviously you're going to have a lot more of the offensive categories and lead the league in offense. And oh, by the way, you've got a generational talent at quarterback, and your fourth wide receiver, McCole Hardman would probably be a number 2 wide receiver, or maybe even a number 1 wide receiver on some of the other teams, right?
You have 4 wide receivers, you run a 4-3. That always helps.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? At the end of the day, I really still do like him, and I would not be upset one iota if he got named head coach. My number 1 pick is the man you already mentioned before.
I know.
And we had talked about it before, and I had said the only team that I would want to see him, because again, I'm a Sooners fan, so I obviously don't want to lose him there. But if I can just transfer him from one favorite team to another favorite team, that makes me a very happy person there. Yeah. But look at his body of work, right? Baker Mayfield, Heisman. Kyler Murray, Heisman. Jalen Hurts, second place in Heisman voting, and oh, by the way, would be your quarterback as soon as you transition into the league, right? Offensive guru, young guy, knows how to instantly turn around a team culture. Right? Stoops had been there for God knows how long before he finally moved on, and they remade that whole culture really quickly into his mold once he took over down in Oklahoma there. But what I really think you're going to see is, if he makes that jump, right? If you're one of those people who is tired of hearing all the announcers and the media gush over Sean McVay, buckle up, because it's just going to switch to him. He's going to be the new media darling that Tony Romo and Joe Buck and everyone else, and all the Terry Bradshaw pregame, and everyone is just going to be going on and on about. So all of that McVay and Cliff Kingsbury and all that, he's going to be the new sexy boy toy that everyone's going to talk about ad nauseum. But talk about, after watching the dumpster fire that was this Eagles offensive season here, right? Yeah. Obviously injuries, fire the strength and conditioning coaches and the medical staff. How we're always the most injured team in the league every single year. I have no idea. Someone needs to lose a job over there. But like our entire offensive playbook, it would just be like a 2 or 3 hour montage of Carson Wentz looking the wrong direction and getting strip sacked every single time, or then throwing another ill-advised pick. So it was just, it wasn't until Jalen Hurts took over and we started actually seeing, some people say, oh, it's kind of the college gimmick of the run pass offense. Well, it's working pretty well for Russell Wilson and all those other mobile quarterbacks that are really putting up those offensive numbers. It's working for a reason, and he would be a breath of fresh air in there. So he's my number 1, but if the enemy gets it, I'm not going to lose sleep over it at all.
Yeah, you make very good points about Lincoln Riley, and I honestly do think that he would be the perfect fit for a team, as I said before. So hopefully that ends up happening for you and all Eagles fans out there. Because I mean, if you're 2 choices come down to Lincoln Riley or Eric Bieniemy, you're in a pretty good spot of position of power there.
Yeah. All right, last item on the docket here. So it would be exceptionally strange if Trevor Lawrence didn't go number 1. So we're assuming he's off the board.
Yep.
Where does Justin Fields go, in your opinion?
So I think a lot of people are, mocking him to the New York Jets right now. I think that everybody thinks that people are souring on Sam Darnold. They're going to take Justin Fields, new head coach is coming in there, and they're going to trade away Sam Darnold. And everything's going to be great, a la what the Cardinals did when they drafted Josh Rosen, moved on the next year, traded him away, and drafted Kyler Murray. The fact that they drafted a defensive coach leads me to believe that the Jets are not in the market to draft a quarterback. And if they are, it's going to be a quarterback in the mid rounds.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what happens is that you become kind of a little bit of a sweepstakes happening at the number 2 pick with the Jets for Justin Fields. So you look at some teams that are, quarterback needy and might be in a position to say, we can take that next step as a franchise if we just make that one move. The team that just sticks out to me for some reason that needs to, doesn't need to, but they're sneaky. They can make a move up there to draft a guy is Washington.
Yeah.
I don't know why I always circle back to them when I think Justin Fields, but I think that Washington is the type of team with Riverboat Ron. They just hired, the GM from the Carolina Panthers days when he was there. The big move that they made back then was having the number 1 overall pick and taking Cam Newton, changed the whole trajectory of their franchise. We talked about it ad nauseum. That's going to be a very good team for a long time with all the young talent that they have there. Obviously, the Dwayne Haskins experience didn't work. Not really mature enough to take on, everything and the rigors of an NFL franchise. But Alex Smith was a great story. A savvy veteran. He looked like he, ultimately is back to playing at a relatively high level. So making a move up there to number 2, and we're not going to get started on what it's going to take to trade up there, but let's just hypothetically say it. If they can somehow make a move up there, you take a guy like Justin Fields, and the pressure's not on him to come in and play right away.
Mm-hmm.
So he can sit for a year behind Alex Smith. Alex Smith can teach him the ropes. He can really learn how to be a pro and kind of take his talent and move it to the next level, a la a lot of these young quarterbacks like Carson Palmer, Aaron Rodgers, a lot of these guys who get to sit for a year. Other teams that make sense for a quarterback, New England, I think everybody is mocking, them to make a move up for, Justin Fields or taking a quarterback later on, depending on who they like. I don't think it's in New England's MO to make to trade up that far to get a quarterback, as we've never seen it happen. But convention gets thrown out the window when you have a season like you just had and you don't have an identity.
Yeah.
So New England makes a lot of sense. And, other than that, I mean, you really don't have teams that have a glaring need other than guys are getting old, right? Guys, quarterbacks are getting old. So, I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier, with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, where are they going with the quarterback? Who knows? What's it going to take to get up there? Probably too much for them to spend. You look at Atlanta. How many years does Matt Ryan have in the tank? Well, if he, has a legit 3 or 4 more years, then, why are you going to trade up to take a quarterback when he's just going to sit there for 3 years? By the time his rookie contract's done, you're going to need to pay him anyway without him even playing.
Yeah.
Another team that obviously, big news item today with Indianapolis, Phillip Rivers retiring, they're in need of a quarterback.
Yeah.
So, again, do they make a move up to get a guy like a Justin Fields? Who knows? So I think there's a few different ways that these programs can go. And again, I'll throw one little curveball at you can kind of marinate on. Detroit.
From Stafford, eh?
New head coach comes in. Maybe a guy like Matthew Stafford, wants to, go to a team where he doesn't want to rebuild. He wants to go and have a chance to win. Maybe they, get the gumption enough to say, we just signed our head coach to a 6-year deal. Maybe let's get him a young quarterback that he can, bring a guy in and mold. So, yeah, I think those are 5 teams that, if you look at it, they're really in need of a quarterback. And let's see who makes the jump up to take. Because honestly, I think that he's going number 2 regardless. I just don't know who is going to trade up to go take that, go make that pick.
Yeah. I've got him going either 2 or 3, and the only way I see him not going in that 2 hole, because I, like you, don't think that, Sally going to the Jets, the first thing he's going to do is, see you later, Sam Darnold, especially when he's coming through the rigors of an Adam Gase-led offense there. So who knows what he'll actually really pan out to be. What I think might end up happening, though, and again, people fall in love and out of love with prospects all the time, but if I'm the Jets, like you say, they've got that defensive minded coach. What is the one thing that you really want on offense to really lock up there? Get your O-line set for the next 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Go out and take, from Oregon there, the
Sewell.
offensive lineman there, Sewell, and
Yeah.
between him and Mekhi Becton, all of a sudden you're laughing, right?
You got bookends, yeah.
Exactly, right? So I can kind of see them going there, but if not, I do probably see them trading out of that spot. If it gets to number 3, that's where things get really interesting, because again, I'm going to go back to my conspiracy hat Kyle here. What I think you could very likely see is Deshaun Watson getting traded to the Miami Dolphins. And here's why. You're going to get Tua going back to the Texans. They get their 3rd overall selection back there. And if that, and of course they're going to sprinkle in some other draft capital and all of that as well too. It's not just going to be a 1-for-1 swap there, because Miami obviously is probably a quarterback away from really making a playoff run next year. They went 10-6 this year. So imagine inserting Deshaun Watson into a Dolphins uniform there. They probably would have won the AFC East, or if not, given Buffalo the scare of their lives for winning the AFC East, right?
Yeah.
But if for whatever reason, Miami doesn't make that trade and they're sitting there at the number 3 pick, there's no one there that they need badly enough at the positions that they're weak at that wouldn't be there, like you were saying, 3 or 4 or 5 picks later. So they are very likely to trade out of that. So now the question does become who makes that jump up to make it, right? Is Washington maybe a little bit scared of Ohio State quarterbacks after the Dwayne Haskins fiasco? Who knows, right? Do they want to relive the RG3 scenario again by moving up to the number 2 pick and mortgaging all of their draft capital? I don't know. I've got 2 other teams that I can see making a run at it, and that would be the Carolina Panthers and the Denver Broncos. So the Denver Broncos have just had a quarterback carousel going on over there. And clearly what is not working for them is trying to take these quote unquote project QBs, as far as like, oh, he's got a big arm, he can throw it clear over those mountains over there, but it's not panning out at the next level, right? So you can trace that all the way back to going back to Tim Tebow. It's just been, just almost comical how many quarterbacks have been through there since, Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl with them. So, I mean, I can see them moving up, but it's tough for them because their draft capital, they would either need to make a Brooklyn Nets style, here's every first rounder for the next umpteen years for you, or they're going to have to involve a legitimate talent like a Chubb or something like that that's going to go the other way. And do you really want to swallow that pill and maybe strike out again, because who knows if Justin Fields will end up panning out at that next level too, right? I think Lawrence is probably a sure thing. Fields, I'm maybe 70% sure he'll be pretty good, but tough to say, right? And then Carolina Panthers, are they 100% sold on Teddy Two Gloves, Teddy Bridgewater over there? I don't know. They did just sign him to a pretty fat contract, but do you maybe take him as an insurance policy, and then Teddy Bridgewater plays this year, and then the nice part about good old NFL is you can cut people whenever the heck you want. So
yeah,
I can see that maybe happening, but like you said, it's going to be either 2 or 3 for sure.
Yeah. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if anything happens really in the NFL draft, because who knows when the next Deshaun Watson situation is going to come up, right? Quarterback gets miffed about something, and all of a sudden you move on, and you didn't think he'd be available, and you trade away somebody for him. So again, I think that there could be a multitude of different things, and right now that's really the conversation that these general managers and head coaches are having, saying, who do we have in tow? Do we have a team that's good enough where we can mortgage our future assets to make it move up for a guy like Justin Fields? And if we do that, are we willing to take on the brunt of our fan base either being really happy or losing their marbles. Because, you look at a movie like A Draft Day, for instance, it's a tale of two stories. You get the one guy, the elation of, yeah, we just got the number one pick, and then it's like, well, what did we give up? Oh, and then it kind of comes down. So are you willing to take on all of the pressure that comes with that? And if you're not sure that Justin Fields, like you're saying, if you're not sure that Justin Fields is 100% going to replicate what he's doing in college and the pros, do you even want to make that move? So again, it'll be interesting to see, but I'm with you. I think that he goes 2 or 3. He's too talented, and the upside is too great for him to not go that high. And if he falls any lower than that, I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, someone will fall in love with game film with him, and make that decision, move up, and probably end up in a situation like that. But even if he does start falling, if Atlanta has the opportunity to draft him at their actual spot, I don't see them trading up to get him. But he's not going further than them at worst, right?
You wouldn't think, but again, stranger things have happened, and you would have thought that Philadelphia, would have taken some different players at their spots the last couple of years, but instead of having Justin Jefferson and DK Metcalf, they've got Jalen Reagor and Arcega-Whiteside.
Don't. Like, this is literally going to turn into a 5-hour podcast if you open the Pandora's box of me physically watching the draft, telling all of my friends, here comes Justin Jefferson, and then hearing a pin drop when Rager got announced. And then, I'm just going to go out and break all of Randy Moss's records. And okay, I'm moving on. I'm going down the rabbit hole already here. I'm spiraling. Before we let you go, you have news to share here.
Yeah, so very exciting news that obviously you are going to be a part of as well. So I am starting a new podcast with a couple of friends called The Front Office, where we dive into a lot of what you and I are talking about and how decisions are made when it comes to draft picks, coaching hirings, how to build, teams and things of that nature. So really kind of taking a more in-depth look at why these things happen and why you shout at the TV every time your team doesn't take the person that you want them to take. So really analyzing things of that nature. So, we go in depth, we talk to some industry professionals, some former professional players, coaches, general managers, and we kind of, have fun with it. So there's a little comedic spin behind it too. So obviously we're partnering with the Dine Sports Network, which we're very excited about. Obviously we've got a good rapport, and we're really looking forward to everything that we're going to be able to do together. And so look for our first episode coming up in the next day or two, I guess, whenever Apple Podcasts finally accepts the feed. But we'll be available on all podcasting networks. And our first episode is going to dive into what goes into building a national dynasty in college football. So we talk about the Nick Saban effect at Alabama. Is Ohio State really a dynasty? We talk about some issues that we have with the NCAA format and how they kind of, do things. And a couple of fun segments as well that I think will really help out those who are looking for kind of that, that extra information. And we actually do a really cool interview with a good friend of mine and a former player for Virginia Tech, who kind of, talks to us about what it's like playing for a national powerhouse down in the States.
Yeah, amazing. So like you were saying, check it out. It'll be out shortly. We'll do a whole bunch of promos and all that for it. We'll give all the listeners all the links. You can find it pretty easily there. But we're happy to have him on board. And for those of you that are tired of hearing my voice and you like the cut of Kyle's jib there, you can check him out on the Front Office podcast, which will be dropping soon.
Yes. So again, before we sign off, you can follow us on Instagram at Front Office Podcasts. And if you want to send us an email, in the front office at gmail.com. And we really look forward to working with Dine Sports on this venture. And we really look forward to having everybody, tuning in and hopefully enjoying the content that we provide.
Amazing. All right. Well, thanks so much for sitting down with us, Kyle. You have yourself a great night, and we'll have you back again as a guest in the future there. Just because you got your own show, don't big time us here and not come back on our little program here, eh?
Anytime, my brother. Always a pleasure. Have a lot of fun doing this.